Just tell me if my voice is audible. So that's all I know. That's all I need, actually. Sorry. The same reaction I need. Yes for thumbs up, no for thumbs down. That would be great. Yes. Thank you so much. Okay. So let's get back. Yeah. So in the last class, we stopped at plant respiration, which was fantastic because even I was happy the way the chapter ended, and I was quite satisfied. And I'm hoping that students understood. And if you have missed the class, there is a recording session on it. Please go through it. And if you read it and if you don't understand it, please, in the coming classes, you can just ask me, sir, this topic is, I have a doubt, and I'm always here to help you out. Okay? That's my promise. So coming to plant growth and development. So one thing that is very strange about this particular topic is for us, it is very hard to connect to plants. And I'm not telling it's for everybody. For me, especially, it is very difficult to connect to plants. Why? Because, there are like, I connect to animals very easily and I can understand their growth, development. For example, if I take a human being, it's very easy for me to understand the human growth and development and the factors affecting the human growth and development, right? Whereas when I look at the plants, it is quite hard for me to just relate and really connect to it. That is why for the people like me, this chapter is very, very essential. And the people who also feel like me, I'm very happy that together we can understand. Okay. So when it comes to plant growth and development, what is one thing that we can observe in plant growth? So when we look at a plant or a tree, in majority of our flowering plants or in gymnosperms, what we observe is the plant has a gift, and the gift is they keep on growing for a very long period of time compared to us. Like that, how we feel bad today. For example, I feel bad. Why am I not too tall? Why did I just stop growing? I just want to be a tree. Just keep on growing. How are they able to achieve it? And how not animals are able to do it? So that is the first question we have to ask. And the second thing is, how systematic is the pattern of growth? Like if you observe the development of a plant, it starts from a single cell. Like us, it's from a zygote, and the zygote divides, and then it further divides, and then it differentiates. Finally, we have a place where it starts sprouting into a small sapling. So you can see that when a seed starts to sprout, it is not the leaf that bursts out, right? It is first the root system that develops, and then followed by the small petals of leaf, and then slowly the shoot system arises, and then the shoot system strengthens, and then it further branches out, and the root system is vigorously developing at this point. And as the plant has this vegetative phase, what we call vegetative phase is the phase where the plant is not having the capacity to reproduce. That is what we call it as a vegetative phase, right? So it follows the vegetative phase very thoroughly, and it develops very well the leaves, the stem, the branches, and the very rigid root system. And it understands its environment and the requirements of the requirements that it has to have to live in that environment. And followed by this vegetative phase is where you come to the reproductive phase, just like us. Like we are born, and then we go with the what you tell. We have this juvenility, and then we go for this reproductive phase, and then finally we have the senescence and aging and death. Correct, right? Similarly, the plant also have the following pattern. So they follow this very beautiful pattern. If you ask in human beings who controls this or who guards this or who is watching this process, why not I become a senescent first and not vegetative next? Why do we have this perfect pattern of growth, right? So if you, let us look at a plant. So if you observe a plant, you can see that a particular leaf, for example, if you see a plant and a particular leaf attains a specific size, specific shape, specific number, specific arrangement, so beautiful, isn't it? And it stops. It's not like a branch has thousands of leaves and it keeps on increasing and increasing. No, it doesn't happen like that. It grows into a particular size, particular number, particular shape, and after certain time, with a change in the season, with a change in the environment, with a change in the availability of resources, These leaves also twirl, and then they dry out, and then they wither off. And the next season comes, and you can see the new leaves sprouting. Correct, right? So this periodic changes keep happening. There is a pattern for a plant growth that we can observe. Take, for example, fruits. The shape of the fruit, the size of the fruit, the composition of the fruit, and when the fruit bears, like you can't get mango in all the season. We get in a particular season, and a mango assumes a specific shape. It does not look like an apple. It's simple as that. Why is that so? Who is reason? What is the reason for all these things? And if we assume and if we just observe all these things, what we understand is plant growth is very, very similar to that of us. And there are certain criteria that are, monitoring the plant growth and development. Okay, kids, you follow me? Chalo. So, what is the pattern for the plant growth? See, if I observe, okay, let's define growth first, and then just give a meaning for the plant growth. Okay. So if I have to just define what is growth, I know that you've been defining growth since your sixth standard, but yet there is no timeline for learning. So let's define growth. I have grown up into this certain height, certain weight, and certain number of cells and certain number of tissues. Now, can I go back to my juvenility? Can I just reduce the height? Can I reduce my bone size? Is it possible? No, right? It's not possible. Even in plants, growth is an irreversible and it's a permanent change. And this change comes with increase in size of a tissue, increase in number of cells, increase in the volume of cytoplasm, increase in the metabolism. So all these things will give the definition for a growth. So growth is irreversible and it is nothing but the change in size and the number of a particular organism. We can call it as a growth. Correct, right? So who gives what promotes growth? I mean, like, who gives the channel for the growth? For every organism to grow, what do we need? We need energy. Correct, right? How do we get energy, students? We get energy through the food we eat. So when I eat the food, is it directly becoming as a source of energy? Definitely not, right? So our body has this beautiful mechanism called metabolism, where it understands the nature of breaking down and making up. For example, we eat a lot of complex food like pizza, burger, or your rice, or your chicken, or egg, whatever you eat. What's happening to it? It breaks down into simpler forms like proteins into amino acids, lipids into fatty acid chain. You understand my point, right? So eventually, this simpler matter is broken down. We can't exactly take the chicken protein and put it into human use, right? What we can do is we can take the proteins that are present in the chicken or mushrooms or egg. We can break them down into simple amino acids and reconstruct it for our use, like human protein or a plant protein. So this is the beautiful mechanism that organisms have evolved over a period of time, which we call it as metabolism. So now we know that metabolism can be divided into two important characteristics, that is anabolic and catabolic. Anabolism defines that you simpler to complex, that is construction is called as anabolism, and complex to simple is called as catabolism. So both go hand in hand to promote something called as growth. Okay. Now, plants, when we talk about how do they grow, they show a specific pattern, as I mentioned. First, when the plant is born, I mean, like when the seed becomes a sapling, they have three important stages. What are those? One is a region of meristematic activity. What is region of meristematic activity? When we began understanding the plant growth and development, we started by telling that plant grows so tall and we cannot grow so tall. And the reason is why? Because if you observe the tips of the plant, for example, if I take a tip like this, for example, wait, just give me a second, students. Okay. Yeah, I'll take an ink annotation so that I can mark it. Yeah. See, if I observe the tip of the plant here and the tip of the plant on the opposite side, that is a root, what do I observe, students? I can observe that these regions are somehow dividing very, very fast. On an average, around 17,000 cells are divided per hour. Okay. So what's happening here? There are special type of cells, and these regions we call it as apical regions. So if I'm talking about the shoot region, it is called a shoot apex. If I talk about the root region, I call it as a root apex. So in these apical regions, we have special type of tissue called as meristematic tissue. So the role of meristematic tissue is very, very simple. They have to keep on dividing and then they have to increase their number. As simple as that. So first it divides into a large number of cells. What happens to these cells that are divided? They're very, very small. They have very less cytoplasm. The nucleus is very, very large. So what happens to these cells? These cells, they become metabolically active. They gather very high amount of cytoplasm in them. And then they start increasing in their size. And this one, we call it as elongation. So this process, we call it as elongation process, or okay, this process we call it as elongation. So in elongation, they just increase in the size, not in the number. And after they elongate, what happens to this? If we look at a plant is not just made up of one particular type of cell. If you look at your leaf itself, you can come across epidermal cells, parenchyma cells, mesophyll cells, which bear our chloroplast. You can come across vascular bundles. They perform various functions like conduction of food, conduction of water. You have cells like sclerenchyma, which provide the structural and mechanical support for the plants, etc. Right? So each cell is not the same. So when the cells are not the same, that means they are meant for a particular purpose. So if I compare the cells that are present in the water conducting tissue, such as xylem, and to that of the photosynthetically active cells called as mesophyll cells, are they same? They're not, right? So what do we call these cells? We call these cells as specialized cells. Specialized cells are ones, they perform a specific function. Correct, right? They perform a specific function. So these specialized cells, they come to origin, okay, they come into existence by a process called as differentiation. What is differentiation? As we know that our life starts with a single cell like a zygote. And today, if you observe a human body or a plant body, we come across various types of tissues. And these tissues are meant for a specific function. Correct, right? For example, if I take xylem, they conduct water. If I take phloem, they conduct food. If I take mesophyll cells, they do photosynthesis. They have a specific role to play. So whenever they achieve a role to play in their life, or a specific role they have to play, we call it as differentiated cells or specialized cells. So the whole of a growth pattern can be divided into three stages. One is meristematic activity, where the number increases, and elongation activity, where their size increases, and differentiation activity, where the cells they become specialized for a specific role. I'll give you an example. We know that we have trachary cells. Trachary cells are the one which are hollow cells. Hollow cells means there's like a pipe, trachary vesicles, we call it as. So they're like large pipes. So they provide this space so that there is conduction of sap. Okay, water. Okay, you can call it as water, and along with ions and etc. So this sap conduction that has to happen with the trachea, how did it even happen? These cells which are differentiated into trachary cells, they have to lose a large amount of cytoplasm. They have to thicken their cell wall. You understand my point? And the nucleus is highly reduced, or the nucleus disappears. And then these cells are interconnected by lignification of their walls. So eventually they become specialized for the water conduction. Similarly, there are so many, a number of cells in the plant where they are specialized for a specific role to play. So this we call it as differentiated cells. So that we understand. But if you observe the overall development of the plant, we can divide the whole growth into two different phases. The plant exhibits something called as a primary growth, and the second is it is called as secondary growth. What is the difference between a primary growth and a secondary growth? Now we know that when the plant is born, or when the plant is started to sprout, it starts developing its root region and it starts developing its shoot region, correct, right? So when these two regions are developing and they're increasing in size, basically elongation process, we call it as primary growth. Here, the mechanical strength of a plant is very, very limited. You only see the growth in a linear, lateral fashion. For example, it grows in a perpendicular fashion, like in the lengthwise. You don't see that the plant is increasing in the size of girth. So this stage of a plant where it only increases in the height with respect to its shoot as well as depth with respect to its root, it is called as primary growth. And there is secondary growth. Usually, the secondary growth is seen in higher plants such as gymnosperms and angiosperms, especially in dicots of angiosperms. What happens in secondary growth is you can see in certain plants, in most of the trees you observe in your environment, when they are a plant, they are very slender. But after a certain period of time, this slender plant starts accumulating the size and their girth slowly starts increasing. That means the size of the plant, not the length of the plant, but the size of the plants periodically increases. So with this increase in the size of the plant, what is happening here? So this phase where this plant increases its size or the girth is called as secondary growth. And that happens with a specific type of a meristematic tissue called as lateral meristems. What is lateral? Apical means at the tip. Lateral means at the side. So since they are at the side, these cells divide sidewise or lateral wise or in the plane of, let's say, x-axis. Okay. So when they divide in the plane of lateral, they are called as lateral meristem. And this lateral meristem are responsible for increase of size of the plant. And what does it give rise to? For example, you have cambium, development of vascular cambium, development of cork cambium. It's all because of lateral meristematic tissue. Okay, that leads to increase in girth. Okay, are you able to understand, students? Yeah, are you following me? Yes, no? Can I have a thumbs up or thumbs down? Are you able to listen, students? Are you able to understand? We have a very good strength, and I appreciate that. Yes, perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. So if you have any doubts or if you want me to repeat, you just have to just post it. Okay. So let's go on. So okay, these are the two phases of the plant growth. Or see, you can just clearly see here what's the difference between your primary growth and the secondary growth. See, this is the secondary growth. You see the initial primary growth is how, if you take a cross section, the stem would look like. But if you take the matured stem, you can see that there is a specific layer like this, okay, which is developed laterally, correct, right? Which is called as cambium. So the cambium development takes place. Okay. So this is about plant development. Okay. So we understood a little bit aspects of growth. That is, growth happens in plant and it happens in a specific direction. And for the plant to, if you observe the pattern of growth of the plant, we can differentiate into two different types, whether it is the maturation and differentiation of the cells or the plant growth itself, like primary growth and the secondary growth, right? Now, coming to the how do we understand the growth? Is growth measurable? Is a question. Can we measure growth, students? I know this is kind of a very silly question, I can tell. You'd laugh at me if I ask you a question. Is growth measurable? Like, are we like fifth standard or fourth standard students? You are asking me this question. Like, of course, the growth is measurable. Because if I measure my weight in 10th standard, I would be around 40 kg. Now, if I would be measuring my weight, I would be 60 kg. That is called increase in size. So, of course, growth is measurable. And also, if I see the height of the plant over a period of time, like if I sow a seed now, and if I check it out after 2 months, if I'm lucky, and if the plant is lucky, it starts. Okay, hold on. I think I have a message. Maybe there is a question. Let me check it out. Please explain the previous slide. Okay. The previous slide of what we were talking about. We were talking about primary. Oh, this one. Okay. See, it was nothing but we are talking about patterns of growth in the plant. So in the initial time, I told you that plant growth can be divided into three phases. That is, the region of meristematic activity, region of elongation and region of maturation. Like if you look at how the plant cells divide and differentiate, so that is one pattern. And second pattern is if you observe the whole plant and these, excuse me, students, it's too noisy here. Okay, sorry about that. Traffic is high today, holiday, right? So chalo. So if you observe the plants, for example, you can see that. Hold on. One more question, maybe. Slide of Cambium. Yeah, this is the slide of Cambium, students. Okay. Uh, I don't know what slide are you seeing. Are you seeing the right slide? Let me check. Yeah, this one, right? This is a slide of Cambium. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to explain here. Okay. So if I talk about the growth pattern in the plant itself, okay, the whole of a plant, not a particular cell or a tissue we are talking about. So we can divide it into two phases. One is a primary growth, other one is a secondary growth. Okay. So primary growth happens in all the plants, like you can talk about in bryophytes, you can talk about in pteridophytes, you can talk about in gymnosperms as well as angiosperms. So what is happening in primary growth? You can see that in primary growth there is a linear growth activity. Linear growth activity means the growth is happening in y-axis. I can tell, because you guys are very smart in mathematics. Okay, assuming that, because I'm very bad at it. Okay, so assuming that the growth happens in the linear direction, that is, it grows in height. Okay, so why does it grow in height in primary growth? Because we have meristematic cells at the tip of the plant where it divides and it grows taller and deeper. When it grows taller, the shoot increases in length. When it grows deeper, the roots differentiate and go deeper and deeper into the soil. So this is called as a primary growth, where you can see the growth happening in this direction. Whereas if you see some of the higher plants like gymnosperms and dicotyledons, I know that a little bit of explanation is required here. Gymnosperms, whereas when I talk about dicots, it represents a specific class of gymnosperms. All flowering plants are called as gymnosperms, right? So in angiosperms are called as flowering plants. In angiosperms, if you divide into two classes, you can come into monocots and dicots. Okay. Monocots are example your grass species, you can see grass, rice, wheat. So they all come under gymnosperms. Angiosperms are something like your rose, or you can talk about this flower is stuck in my head, or like a lily, or you can talk about any flowering plant. Okay, so which do not have leaves which are like looking like grass, but they have a proper leaf. Okay, they're called as dicots. And the seed also, like for example peanut, you can divide the seed into two parts, right? They're called as dicots. So in gymnosperms and dicots, what you can see is after a plant reaches a certain stage, that means after they finish their primary growth, you can see that suddenly, for example, a tree you can take, the tree does not directly grow like this. It starts growing into a small plant, and the stem is very, very slender, and it starts growing in height for a certain height. And you can see that even after coming to 8 feet or 10 feet, the stem is even very, very small. But suddenly, after it reaches a certain age or a certain time, what happens? The girth, that is the size of the plant, it starts increasing on the sideways or in the x-axis, okay, lateral wise. So initially the growth was like this, now the growth is like this. Okay, so now the plant starts growing like this, and this growth is called as lateral growth. How does this lateral growth happens? It happens because, see, if imagine, you not imagine, just observe the cells, it's very properly given. We have xylem and we have phloem. Between xylem and phloem, there are something called as lateral meristematic tissue. Lateral meristematic tissue means, see, apical meristems means they grow upward. Lateral meristem means they divide sideways. So this lateral meristems, which are between the xylem and phloem, they starts becoming active. When they start becoming active, they do not grow upward, they grow sideways. When they grow sideways, what happens here, students? It increases in girth. So this increase in girth is called as secondary growth. So this is also called as lateral meristematic activity, or it is also called as secondary growth. Did you understand? Is it understood? Is it understood? Yeah. Okay. Karimganj. Okay, JNV Karimganj. I think this is the first time I'm seeing the name of the JNV. All right. Yeah. So can we go now for the next slide? Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about is growth measurable, and we were having a joke about it, and we were like, "Oh, seriously, this is a question to answer? Or is growth measurable? Of course, yes, growth is measurable. Growth can be measured in the terms of height. Growth can be measured with the terms of cell number. Growth can be measured with the increase in cytoplasmic volume. Growth can be measured with the increase in size. Correct, right? Correct, right? So growth is measurable. Of course, growth is measurable. So when you measure growth, how can we measure growth? If I talk about the increase in the cytoplasmic volume, what is cytoplasmic volume or protoplasmic volume? We know that a cell has a cell wall, and cell wall, within the cell wall we have plasma membrane, and within the plasma membrane is our cytoplasm. When the cell is born, the cytoplasm is very little, and after a certain period of time the cell uses a lot of energy and they start increasing their volume. That is, the cytoplasm from little bits it starts increasing. Now measuring this is a very hard task, people. Why? Because it's so hard to just look into each cell and then try to understand its growth. So that's not possible. Instead, what we can do is we can see in terms of height, we can see in terms of size or girth, we can see in terms of cell number. Okay, we can see in the terms of differentiation that is happening. Based on that, we can measure growth. Okay, so that is one thing. Now, if you see, how do the growth curves affect? For example, is growth the same in all the types of cells, or can we represent growth in a specific manner? Okay, we have certain regions of the plant where not always the growth is same. I know that little bit complicated it is. So what are we trying to do is, we know that plant grows, correct? And we know that we can measure the growth. But when we try to represent growth in a mathematical form, we understand that not all parts of the plant follow the same way of growth. You understand my point? There is a difference in how the different types of cells or different types of regions of plants behave. So if we have to try to represent growth, we come across several types of growth patterns. Okay, so let us understand different types of growth patterns or different types of growth rates, okay, in mathematical terms. So the first way or the first type of growth, we can call it as arithmetic growth. What is arithmetic growth? Let's say that we have, you can look at this diagram. Okay. Okay, sorry. I'll just erase this. Okay. Hold on. Uh, Hold on. Sorry, students. Point options, and then yeah. So yeah, look at this. We have two cells. Okay, zygote has divided. One zygote is a single cell and it has divided. Okay, and I'm not taking an example of zygote. Actually, zygote is not a good example for arithmetic growth. But let us take any cell. Okay, not zygote. So let us take that we have two cells in the beginning, in the initial stage. Okay, when we started. Now what happens is, out of these two cells, only one cell divides. So from 2, it becomes 3. From 3, it becomes 4. From 4, it becomes 5. You see the pattern? So this type of a growth is called as arithmetic growth. When does the arithmetic growth happen? If you have the cells, and among a group of cells, only one cell is active for dividing, and the rest of the cells do not divide. At this point, we call it as arithmetic growth. Now, if I take certain number of cells, and then if I have to measure how many cells have added up over a period of time, okay, let's say that I start now. I take 10 cells, and then let's say that each cell takes 1 minute to divide, and I check after 10 minutes. Now how many cells I get? 10 cells. Now what do? I take 1 minute. See, I take 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Correct, right? I have 5 minutes. Now, every minute, what is happening? One cell is adding. So here, 2 cells, 3 cells, 4 cells, 5 cells, 6 cells, 7 cells. Now, if I try to plot this X and Y axis, what do I get? I get a very, very, very beautiful straight line. So I get a linear graph. Correct, right? So only in an arithmetic growth, I can observe that my graph looks like a straight line or a linear growth pattern is observed. You understand my point? What kind of a growth pattern is observed in arithmetic, or the given graph below shows what type of growth? So if your graph looks like this, like a straight line against time, and that number of or number of cells in the plant, or the number of cells increased, or you can talk about height of the plant, etc. Okay, if anything is given, and if you see a straight line, you should directly take arithmetic growth. Okay, this is some of the important topics in this particular chapter. You understand my point? So can we express an T is equals to L naught plus RT growth rate? So what does it represent? At this time, at the 0th time. So when I start at the 0th time, so this becomes my LT, correct, right? I'm starting at this point, at this hour. Hold on. Maybe I have a question. Do I have a question? Sir, voice is not clear. Guys, is it the same for everyone, or is it only Yashu is having a problem? Others, are you able to hear me? Yes, no? I'll check the network. Give me a second. Okay, some people are able to hear and some are not able to hear. Okay, network is fine, people. Yeah. Yeah. I think can you just check on your network? Okay, for once, maybe there is a network issue, and I will try to talk loudly. My voice is low, but I'll try. Okay. Can I continue? Perfect. Thank you, guys. Okay. I think whatever you had today for lunch, I think you should continue to have on a regular basis. This is the first time I'm having a little bit of conversation with you guys, and it makes me very happy. You can see the smile. Okay, I know it's not so good, but it makes me very happy when my students are responding. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, but when you talk to me, it's perfect. Okay, it's very happy situation. So let's continue. So LT is equals to L naught plus RT. That's what the equation we're talking about. What is length at time t? So now I'm starting now. So before even I start my experiment, I begin measuring, right? Okay. At this time, the plant is at 2 meters height. So that is called LT. And L naught, okay, length at time t, okay. L naught is at the length at time 0, and R is equals to growth rate divided by elongation per unit time. I think it's very easy for you to understand this equation and how it is represented. So overall growth with the time change of time t is equals to what is the growth when I started my experiment plus the overall growth rate, for example, 20 cells per minute or 20 cells per hour. That is the R value, and T is the time, okay, per unit time. How many, like for example, I just told you 20 cells per hour. So that is called as 20 cells is R, and per hour is the time. So you represent this arithmetic growth. And remember, what's important for you is arithmetic growth is a linear graph. Okay, so that's very, very important. And the second one is geometrical growth. Geometrical growth is very, very fascinating. And geometrical growth is responsible for some of the greatest wonders that you can see in the universe. For example, When you are born as a single cell, or any organism starts its journey from zygote, it is only one cell, okay? And the geometric growth is very, very fast because all the cells are involved in the division. So when all cells are involved in the division, so it starts from 1, 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, 8 becomes 16, 16 becomes 32, 32 becomes 64. And I don't know what next. Okay. So like that, the growth increases exponentially. But is it always the same? Definitely no. If I talk about a geometric growth, it has three important phases. One is called as a lag phase. Next one is called as an exponential phase. And other one is called as saturation phase or stationary phase, we call it as. So now let us represent it with respect to a time. So there is this particular situation when the fertilization happens and we have a zygote. If you're thinking that, okay, the zygote is formed and the zygote immediately goes and okay, 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, and it starts at time 0, you're very, very wrong. The zygote, the once it is formed, it takes a certain amount of time, which we call it as a dormant phase, where the zygote is completely inactive. It goes into the sleep state. So it is just quiet for a certain number of hours. And this time is called as a lag phase or a preparatory phase. The cell is preparing itself. And in the lag phase, the cell growth is high, but the cell division is very, very less. Now, once this lag phase is finished and the cells are having this gain this exceptional capacity, now what happens to this cell is they immediately enter into this rapid phase called as an exponential phase. In an exponential phase, where you see this tremendous amount of division, where it becomes 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16, that kind of that kind of a growth pattern can be observed in exponential phase. Okay, but is it forever? Definitely no. So the cells also have the capacity to lose their function of division. So which we call it as Hayflick's limit, which we don't have for your syllabus, but we might have assume, okay, my cells, if I give the permission for my cells, they can divide forever. Definitely no, students. They lose the power of division and they lose this capacity of division. So this loss of function of division is what leads to stationary phase. At one point, they lead to saturation phase where it no more divides and the numbers remain stagnant. They no more divide. They have reached this maturation. They have reached this limit. So that is what gives us stationary phase. Understood? So we have lag phase, exponential phase, and stationary phase, and we can observe this growth pattern or a growth curve in a geometrical growth. Okay. But if I observe the graph shows a particular kind of an S kind of a curve, which we call it as a sigmoid curve. So if a question is asked which type of a growth pattern shows a sigmoid curve, or if the graph itself is given, like for example, size or weight of an organ with respect to time. Can you see the y-axis, what we are representing? Here we represented the height of the plant. Here we are representing size or weight of the organ. You see? So these are two different ways of understanding. Okay, when it comes to length, it is algorithmic or arithmetic, sorry. Or when it, excuse me, just give me 1 second, students. Okay. Students, just hold on for 2 minutes. I'll be back. Okay, just 2 minutes. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. So let's continue where we stopped. and I hope you can hear me still. Okay. So whenever a question is asked, what kind of a growth curve represents a sigmoid curve? So you have to go for geometric. Students, actually, we had power issue, and then the battery was a little bit, but the battery is dead now. So I'm not able to access any power source right now. Yeah, poor network also. So I'm really sorry about it. Okay. Um, so we can stop the class now, and I will continue in the next session. Okay, let's not go ahead because it will be very unprofessional. Okay, is that fine? Are you able to hear me, students? Yeah, I'm really sorry about this. Thank you very much for your presence, and I'll see you in the next class. Definitely, I'm going to complete it. Okay. Actually, today I was supposed to complete it, but unfortunate situations, and I promise you I'll complete the syllabus for you. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your cooperation, and thank you for your conversation too. I really enjoyed the class. Yeah. Thank you. Bye bye. Happy New Year. Have a nice holiday.